Hi, everybody. How are you doing? I'm okay. Just hanging in there, chasing time as usual. um, so many things happening. But did you have a good weekend? I know that it's probably midterm time, right? For some classes or getting ready to anyway for tests. So let me open my files. If you can log into Canvas and download the notes and our assignments for today.
I was trying to learn how to do functions over the weekend.
Oh, yeah, with Python,
Yeah.
it's easy. We'll go
Yeah.
over that in a little while, but
Wasn't too
if
bad.
you, yeah, if you understand C++, Python's much easier. Yeah, we'll take care of function in the next few weeks. Right now, we're just trying to work with containers. I think it's important to really understand the type firsthand. When you get into the function area, it's a lot easier. Or learning how to work with loops so function will work better. Um, but overall, it's not bad. Okay, so it's 2 o'clock. It's that time, right? Welcome everybody. And today we're gonna work on lists, tuples, and dictionary. If you go through the reading, you kind of see some of the example. What I did was, originally I was just gonna expand on lists, but then, when you go into lists, you have to talk about tuples. When you talk about list and tuple, you gotta talk about dictionary. So the chapter 10 does go over all the details for the three, and then chapter 11 really expand a little bit on tuples and methods. So we'll touch on first list, and then we'll get into tuple and dictionary. So it seems like really long in the notes, but a lot of it is example. So we'll take a look at some of the example. Let me go open up my idle. Okay, so as you look at Unit 6 notes, you would start with lists. And in prior weeks, we talked about lists and we use a little bit of lists. And you're going to see similarity with how we would slice the list, very much like how we worked with string in the previous week or 2 weeks ago. So what you have is you would use the square bracket to contain the elements of your list. And you simply give it a name, and the standard name would apply, like how you would name your variable. So the difference between a list and a variable is that a list, we can contain many elements, 2 or more, right? Now in the case, if you only have one that's actually assigned, you need to put a comma after that. So it creates an extra empty space for possible assignment in that list. And similarly, what you see with tuples, we can have elements in all different type of data in the list, like integers. We can also have mixed types with Python. So you can have something with an integer, something with a string, and something with a float, like what you've seen on page 1 example. Okay, so now when you need to access it individually, then you would have to really look at how that data is going to be parsed. If we want it to be integer, we have to really bring it forward as integer, or string or different type. So that's important to keep in mind when you have a mixed type in your container. Okay. Now, in other cases, we might have a nested list. So a list can contain another list, which gives us another dimension to that list. So when you start seeing 2-dimension or 3-dimension or multi-dimensional lists, it's really a list containing multiple lists within, or it could be another list, right? So that's what you would have in a nested list, and you simply include the square brace within your list to indicate that is nested.
Professor, can you share the screen? We can't see the screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to do that. There you go. So thank you, Michael. In the case where we nest a list, we would utilize this for different functionality. For example, I can represent a list of my products, and inside that list that would have a name of my products and then another sub list that would have a price for my product. And in the case where if you translate this to C++, Java, and other language, you would see this in an array where we would have multi-dimension array, where it would be an array within another array, similarly that what we have with lists in Python. So we would have different functionality for the nested list. And with this, what you would see is that later on, we will come back to this where we would be able to use a loop, like a for loop, to access the element in each dimension. So on page 1, it shows you a list called my list. And in this list, we have different characters, right? Very much like what you see with string. So now we would use index, right? Starting from 0, going forward, positive index value, to be able to access each of the element in that list. So if we want to print out the capital P here, which is the first element, it's in the first element of that list, we simply do a print and then your list name, and we would have the index 0. So you can use index value to be able to access the value of that element. Now to output the T, we just point to number 2 as an index because it's 0, 1, 2, right? So we can output the T and so forth. So here it shows you how you can use indices to be able to access each of the element. Similarly, what you see with array. So we simply, inside the print method, we simply use the list name next to the index number, which is enclosed by the square bracket. Okay. Now, in the nested list, when you're looking at the nested list, you have to look at it as 2 separate entities, right? So when we access the second element of the first list, which is happy, then we would say that this is list 1, which is 0, and the second element is to follow that, which is number 1. So first you have to point out which list that you're accessing, right? If you put 0 in the first square brace here, then you would say that that's the first sublist. Then next to that, you would indicate the element value or the index value for that list, okay? In the second one here, we have the list, right? Which is the main list, which contain 2 sublists. And we're accessing the second sublist, which is the value 1. And we would access the 4th element in that second sublist by using the number 3. Okay. So let me open up my program, and I want to run the example for you so you can see. So here is most of the examples included the ones that we talked about, right? We wanted to show P by using index 0. That's the first one. We want to show the T by using index number 2, right? Which is here. Which is here. And then we want to show O, which is the 5th one, using index 4. And then on the nested list, we want to point out which list that we're accessing and which element from that list. Okay. And then again, second list, sublist, which is using number 1. So if you have more than 2, right, you just continue with the index to indicate which sublist, and then following with the element value if you want to access that element. So if we run this, you can see it's simply output as what you would know from the comment. Okay. So we can indicate that we can print out the A by pointing it to the first list, happy. And then it's the second element, so it's going to go to that A. And then for the next one, we're going to use the second sublist, and we wanted to access the 4th element, which is number 5. So you simply use 3. Okay. So we simply count up from 0 each of the index, and that way we can include it inside that method print. Any question? Okay, so going back to here, you see some example, and similar to string, right, which is a container and it's a group of sequential character. Starting from index 0, but we can also use negative indices going from the last element, which is from the right to left. So when you go from left to right as index through each of the element, you use positive value, 0 through whatever number for your list elements, the length. And then if you go from the right to the left, you would use -1 to start, and then you would increase it as you move left, very close to string. That's what we've seen in string previously. So here it shows you that we can access the last element by using -1 in our index, enclosed up by the square brace. And then we would output the 5th element from the last. So we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So from the last, that's going to give us the O. Okay. So I created this table to kind of give you a visual on how that would be for each of the character inside that list, and how you would use the index value to output each of the character. Any question? And we also can slice our list like what we talked about in string. So you would place the marker where you want to slice, right? Cut a certain portion of that list using the index. So we can say that we can go from the 3rd to the 5th element by using 2:5. Okay, why don't we use 4 there? If you put the 4 there, it's going to cut it right before the fifth. So you want to include the fifth element. So it's going to put the marker right before the next one, which is 5. So we want to go from 2 to 5, right? And so we would have the third, which is O, right? G. And so it's going to put it 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to put it right between the R and the A. Okay. Or we can go from the right toward the left using the negative index. So what we can do is we can use colon -5. So if you don't put a value in front of the colon, it just assumes, right, from, you know, a certain point. So if you put a negative, it's going to assume from the lower value, which is -1 at the beginning, going to -5. Okay. So now what you can have is you can have different slicing setup. So let me open up idle. So you can see it in idle. So here's the example that we use in our notes, right? And when we run this, you can see that the first one, we're going from third to fifth, which gives you OGR. Then we're gonna go from now, if you're looking at from the M, that's -1. So if we want to move forward to 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we put the marker here. Then we want to print out the rest, which gives you the P and the R. Okay. Then for the sixth element to the N, you can have 5 and then colon blank. So we would have the sixth element to the N. Okay. And then lastly, if we want to print everything on from the beginning to the end, instead of using print my list, if you use the slice mechanism, then you can simply leave the indices empty, but use a colon, which is still going to give you all the elements from the beginning to the end. And that's another way that you can use the slice mechanism. But if I use print my list, it should show all the element in that list. Okay. Any question? Okay. So here what we have is we can also update our list, right? Like we can change value, we can change a certain item in the list by using the index. And lists are mutable, that means that it's changeable, where tuple is not. It's immutable, meaning that it's static. And the only way that you can change the tuple is if you have a sublist within. So list is like an array where you can change the content inside, the element values, right? You can also add more elements and so forth. So let's say that if this is our list odd and we have all even number and we want to change those up. So let's change the first one we want to change the number 2 to an odd value, which is 1. So you simply do odd and then the index where that needs to take place, the change. Then you have a reassignment. So you reassign it a different value. Then what it's going to do is to go to that location and then update the new value in that element location. Then when we print it, it should say 1468. Okay. Now, what if we want to change a group within a group of elements? We can go from the second to the fourth items, right? 468, and we can update that to 3, 5, and 7. So it would write over those location, and it's going to put 3, 5, and 7 following the one that we previously had. Okay, so we want to print that out. So your output would be 1468 and then 1357. Now, that's one way that we can do it, is to use indices and the slicing mechanism to update specific group within the list. Or we can also use append method and extend method. So in a list, you can append, right, to add one item to the list. So if I only have one thing to add to the list, I would use the append, as it would only take, right, one value. Now, if you want to add more than one, you want to add multiple items into the list, you would use extend. Okay. So here I have 135 and I want to add 7 to my list. So what it would do is it would append to the last location, right? It's going to drop it in as in last in. So it's going to add it to as a last element in that list. So 7 is going to go after 5. Then what if we want to add more than one items? What if we want to add 9, 11, and 13 after the 7? So you simply do an extend. And then inside the parameter, you want to have the sublist specified using the square brace. What that will do is we're going to take the value from those sublists and then add it to the original list, which is odd. Okay, then we have that print. So our output would be 1357, and then after that we added 9, 11, and 13 using extend. Okay, so first we append, then we extend. Now we can also use the plus sign operator to combine two lists. So it's concatenation, right? So we can have one sublist and another sublist combined to create a bigger list. So an example that you see here is that we have odd is 135, okay? And we want to concatenate with 975, okay? So what that will do is that it's going to take the sublist and add that to the existing list odd, it concatenated, okay? Now, if we want to repeatedly print it, we simply use an asterisk, right, as the operator to multiply it however many times that you specify here. So the value there would indicate how many times it's going to repeat for that method. And we saw some of this when we did the print. Okay. So let me run the program so you can see. And then I'll show you how you can do the assignments. So we want to talk a little bit about how we would create a list and then update our lists. So here's my changed list. As the example that you see in your notes, right? Here's the same code for that, same script. So when we run this, right, it changes the 2 to the 1. And then it also, the second time we extend, we added those. Okay. Or I'm sorry, we changed those. We changed those by using the index.
I had a quick question.
Yes.
Why does it, when the print, why does it include the brackets and the quotation marks in the example, like in all the examples, I guess?
For the extend, you said?
Or just in general, like why does it include, like in the example above where it says program, why does it include the quotations and the brackets at the end?
Because you want it, okay, so when you don't include the bracket, it doesn't understand that it's a group of elements that you're trying to add, multiple things. Because the way, we don't have a way to specify what's a variable and what's an array or a list in Python. We just use an identifier and an assignment. So even when you use a separator as a comma, it doesn't know, it's just a way that they had used as syntax. So when you want to include a group, you would use a square bracket. Okay.
Okay.
Now, if you don't pass that with the square bracket, what will happen is it's gonna throw an error, number one, because it's seeing multiple things being separated. Number two, it doesn't understand what type of container that's pulling that from. And what with this is that it's also gonna extend the original container for however many elements in that sub list that you're adding. So they're multi-purpose in that.
Okay.
So yeah, in other languages, you would say that we would declare a variable with var, so it would know that it's a variable, and then, you know, using specific keyword, but it's not like that in Python. It relies on the syntax structure to really establish, right, what type of container that is and how many elements that's going to be extended or used for that container. Any other questions? Okay,
Sure.
Yes.
To add to that, what would it look like? I guess, could you add a 2-dimensional list to a 1-dimensional list?
Yeah. So so when we do a sub list, when we append into, or we extend into it, we just adding the value, but you can also add a sublist to a list and then another sublist to that list. So when you have a list within a list with you know, another list within that list, right, like 2 sublists within that original list, you increase the dimension for that list. Okay, so when we started going through some of the method, you're gonna tie it all together, I promise. So in the case where, let me find my program and then I will open up the append and extend. So this is, we added a sublist to the original list, right? And when we run this, all that is it take those value and it added those into it. Okay. But now, later on, you're gonna see that when we start working with something like tuples, or even with the list, how we iterate it, we can actually have a sublist within a list, or a list within a tuple. Okay, so that increases the dimension from one dimension to the next, because if you have a list that contains another list, that's a 2-dimension. When you have a list that contains 2 other lists, that's 3-dimension, and so forth. Okay, so I'll touch on the 2D when we get to that part in a little while. But here is number 1, I want you to create a list of 6 music genre, right? Like rock, you know, R&B, pop, whatever you like. And I want you to use the print method and the index to output the first, the third, and the last from the list. And that's a very simple one to do. Okay, so to start, I have an example one that I did. Very easy. So when you write your program for your music genre, you can name it anything you want as far as the list name, equal, and then remember we want to use the square brace. Since the genre is really string, right? We want to put the quotation mark. You can use single or double there. Enclose that. Make sure that you enclose that with the reggae, with the bracket. So reggae is my last one here. So I have rock, hip hop, R&B, country, pop, reggae. You can go into classical. You can go into ska. There's so many, right? So you can pick the genre that you like, right? And then you can use the index. So if I'm accessing the first genre, I simply put a 0, right, in the square brace here. And then I would use my list name, and that goes inside the parameter for print. The third one, I would use the number 2, right, 0, 1, 2. So it should print R&B. And then on the last one, I can use 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can use 5. If you have more, you can use the proper index value there, or you can also use -1. Okay, it's the same. So when we run this, I have rock as the first, that's verified here. R&B, right, as the third, that's here. And then reggae as the last. Okay, so that would be exercise 1. Have a list that contain music genre 6. And then you would show the first, the third, and the last. Very easy. Any question? So now, oops. Let's look at number 2. Okay. So what we want is we want to create a list of 5 classes that you have taken or currently taking. You want to use print and index to output a range of the courses as follows. Show first, second, and third classes. So we want to do slicing in this case, right? We want to show the third to last classes using negative index, and we want to show all the classes in the list. So keep in mind that we would use the colon to separate the index so we can show them in range when we slice this. So here's my classes program. So I have my classes is my list name, and it contains these classes, right? I have 5, CIS30A, 27A, 11, 7, and 14A. Okay. Now we want to show first to third classes. So we're gonna go from 0, right? 1, 2, and let's see, I think I have more than this. So 0, 1, 2. Now if I cut it at 3, right, it's not going to show this guy. So I want to cut it at 4. That's my marker, right at 4. So we wanted to show 0 to third. Then we would have 0, 4, and then your list name. Now using the negative, we want to show third to last class. So we're going to go from 1, 2, 3 as negative value. -1 is the last one here. -2 is the next one, and -3 is the third one, which is CIS11 here. Okay. So I wanted to place it from the third to the last. So I want to place it at -3 and then colon leave blank. Now you can have it with the colon with no indices here inside the square brace to show all the classes, or you can simply just do a print and your list name. That would also achieve the same thing. Let me close this and let me rerun it so it shows at the top for you. Okay. So I think I put more here. Yeah, let me fix that. Okay, that's better. So I have 0 to 3, which is at the 4th element. So it's going to cut it right before. Okay. So I have the first 3 classes shown. Then I use a negative value. Okay. And I wanted to go from my third class, which is CIS11, and it's going to show the last 3 here. So I would do a -3 colon blank. And then for all the classes, you can have, you know, no indices with the colon in the square brace, or you can simply use your list name, which gives you the same. Any question? So this is a simple exercise similar to what we did with string using indices and list slicing. Okay, no question on number 2. Okay. So for number 3, it asks you to write a Python program that updates the elements from a certain value to a different value. Okay. So we have 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 assigned to nums as a list. And we want to change up starting at 200. So we want to change the second element to 300. And then we want to change the third element to 500 and the next element to 700 and 900. Very similar to the example that you see in our notes. Okay. So we can do them individually or we can do them as a group. It's up to you. Okay. So I'm following the example so that way you can see that the first one is going to be an individual update, and then the next one is going to be a group. Oh, that's an example. Sorry. Let me find my program here. Okay, so here's my program. First, I declare my list called nums as given in the problem. I assign it value 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 for my elements in nums list. Then what we can do is we can do them. So since 100 is the same, we're changing up the rest. So we can use one line. So we're going to go from the second element, which is index 1, to colon the last element, which is index 5, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we want to go to after that element. So we want to go up to 5. Okay. So now after that, we would have it equal to the new assignment value. And then you would put in the updated values in that, in the list that you're gonna change from. Okay. Then we simply do a print to get the updated list. So when I run this, I would have a 100, 300, 500, 700, and 900 as it asks. If you want, you can do a print here for the original list to see how it changes over time. So we can go from the old list, which is 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, and then we update it by using, right, the indices from 1 to 5. So we updated all of these and changed them to the new value by doing the reassignment. Okay. Any question? So this is exercise 3, and we simply use indices and reassignment to update the values of our elements inside a list. So since we talked about append and extend, we can do number 4. So in number 4, it gives you a list, which is called animals. So we declared animals. And in that list, we have 3 elements: dogs, cats, and birds. Then we are going to add rabbits to the animals list and then display the updated list. After that, we're going to add 3 more elements: hamsters, turtles, and fishes to the updated list from after we added rabbits. Then we're going to use the operator to include birds, snakes, and then output it. And then we would display the updated list 3 times. So very similar to the example that you see. So here is my program. I don't know why I keep clicking the new file, sorry. Okay, so first I have animals, which is my list, equal, this is where we do assignment, and then we put in dog, cats, and birds as the question asks us. Then I have a print of the list, so that way I know what the original list looks like. Then we are going to use the append method to add one more element to our list. So it's going to drop rabbits after the birds. It's going to add that in. And then it's going to print here, show us all the updated lists. Then we're going to add a sublist or a group of elements, which is hamster, turtle, and fishes. I should put the S there. And we updated our list, so we want to print it. Then for the concatenation, you just simply use the print method, the list name, plus use the operator, the plus sign, and then add in the 2, which is birds and snakes. Then we're going to print it 3 times after we update it. Okay. So here I got dog, cats, and birds as my original list. Then I appended rabbits, so it shows me that rabbit is last added there. After that, I extend my list and include hamsters, turtles, and fish or fishes. And then after that, we use the concatenation method to print out the list with 2 more, which is birds and snakes. So you see those added here. And then what we will do is we will have it printed 3 times. So it just repeat the elements inside that list 3 times. So you see that's 1 time, right? 2 times, and then 3 times. Okay. Any question for number 4? Now I use string for these as an exercise, but yes, you can use numbers, you can use any type if you want to practice. It's just string is easier for us to identify, right? But if you want to use values like integers and floats, that's fine, because eventually in your program, right, could be your project or for your app, you want to use scores, or you want to indicate scores or prices, etc. So we can use different type, data type for our list. Okay, any question? If I went over the program too fast, if you want to take a look at later, right, near the end, or, you know, I will release the video when it gets available this evening. So Okay. So that was our number 4, or question for exercise 4. In the next one, we are given numbers as a list. And we have 10, 50, 100. And it asks you to write a Python program that insert 30 between 10 and 50. Next is we're going to insert 70 and 90 between 50 and 100. And then insert 300 after 100. So before we do this one, I want to revert back to our notes. And you would see example for insert on page 4. Okay. So you can insert one item at a certain location using insert method. Okay, so you can simply insert however many times by indicating the value, right? And then what you want to do with the slice. So let me get the program running so you can see it better than just looking at it. Okay, so here is my insert. So I want to insert the 3 right? The 3 between the 1 and the 9. Okay, so you want to tell it where to place that by indicating what is the value and the placement. Now, if I want to insert the 5 and the 7 between the 1 and the 9, I simply can also use indices, right, to tell it where to add it. Okay, so we can do insert 5 and 7 between these. So the output for that, as you saw previously, it puts a 3 between the 1 and the 9, and the 3 and the 5, or the 5 and the 7 between the 1, 3, and 9. Okay, using index. Okay, so we can use insert to add one or multiple values as long as we specify where that is. Okay, so for our exercise, we have to do all of these tasks in a program. We have to insert 30, we have to insert 70 and 90, and then we want to insert 300 after 100. So here we go. So I have my list numbers. It's assigned 10, 50, and 100 as element values. Then I wanted to add or insert the 30 between 10 and 50. Okay, so we want to use index 1 to 1 here. So we want to put 30 in between 10 and 50. Then we print it. Question?
Question, yes. Tell me the number 1 to 1. So what is the first one? What's the second one?
Yeah, so you wanted to identify where that's going to be. So the index 1 is the second value in that list. So yeah. Okay. and then it's gonna go there because we only have the one, so we
Okay.
wanted to stop at that location.
Okay.
Start and stop.
Okay. And second one means you add one number, 30, right? First
Right.
one is
So,
position.
so on the second one, I wanted to go in the third position, and it's still at the third position because I want to squeeze into the third position, which is why it's 2
Okay.
to 2.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I see.
now, yeah, you have to tell it the location on where you wanted to insert that. So since it's still 2 numbers, but you wanted to point to the location, the spot, right? The location in that list. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And lastly, after we added 70 and 90 here, right, which is in the third location, index 2, we still put those 2 in that third location. So it's going to add 2 of the elements there. Then after that, we're going to insert 300 after 100. And a way that you can use insert is that you don't have to use the indices. If you use it within the parameter of the insert method, you tell it where as a value and then what it is added.
Okay.
Okay. So when
For
we
the
run
second-
this, yes.
Oh, I was gonna say for the second one where we're putting 70 and 90, would it, instead of it being 2, it would be 3 because the list now has 30 there?
Okay. So here's my code. I want you to see the output real quick, right? Yeah, so if you have, I'm sorry, if you have 2 and 2, it would be, you're right. So if you have, if you put 2 and 2, it's gonna put it at 30, after 30, 70 and 90. So if we wanted to put it at after 50, we have to change this to a 3 and 3. Let me see. Yeah, now it's in order. Good catch. So if we put a 2 and 2, it puts it in the second or the as a third element. But if we want it to be like what the question asks us in order after 50, then yeah, you would include the 30 that you added. Good point. So we would do a 3 and 3. And then lastly, we added the 300 after the 100. Okay. Question? So this is how you would work with insert method for a list, right? We can use indices, or we can simply use the parameter and then put in the value of what you want to insert and also point to the value at the location where you want to insert. Any question with inserting or using insert method with lists?
So the insert function only inserts at the end of the list?
No, unless you specify it, right?
So like, but
You
in like
use,
the last one where we added
yeah,
300, it would only add it to the end?
yeah, unless you use indices. You have to use
Okay.
indices to really you know, if you want it in the middle, then you have to specify the index for that.
Okay.
Question. And you can play with this a little bit more to get more practice, right? So these are just a few things that we can see how insert would be used. But in the case where if you write your program and if you want to update your list by adding in new values, then you can also use insert. Okay.
Question?
Yes.
Can you insert an empty space?
There you go. So now let's try. Hold on, let me redo this part. Let's see that if it does this. Say we have, what was it, 6 numbers? If it's out, it might throw it out of range. I think it does, but let me test it real quick.
Oh, so you wouldn't
2, 4, 6, 7.
use
Yeah.
quotes or anything to put in empty space?
Let's say that we do this and then we want a mix. So you want like a mix, right?
Yes.
Type. Okay. There you go. So it shows it as empty string. Now, if you trying to put things out of range, sometimes it will be out of range error, but that's how you can still add. All this is just, it's gonna cut element location for a string and it prepares to store string there along with integers. Okay. Any question? So the indices is where we would do the reassignment, and then the insert is where we would use the parameter, pass the parameter. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so this one deals with delete for number 6, right? You given vowels is 20, 30, 40, 60, and 80. We want to delete the second one, which is 30. And then we also want to delete the next 2 after 30, the 40 and the 60. And we want to remove it. So, and print. So that's simply what it asks you to do, right? Provide the screen capture. I forgot to type that there. But so in the delete, if you look at your notes, it's right after insert. It's also on page 4 and going to page 5. You can use your index to point out which element you want to delete using the keyword delete. Remember, this is a keyword, unlike insert and append and extend. That's a method. So you simply use del for delete, and then following it with the list name and then the index in the square brace. Okay. We can delete one that way. We can also delete a group of items by using the index range. Okay. Now, if you want to delete everything, like your entire list, you simply do del and then your list name. After that, of course, it's no longer exists, so it's gonna throw an error when we were trying to print that. Okay. Now, another way that we can remove a certain item is we would use remove or pop. Now, pop is really applied to stack because it's, you know, last in, first out. So it's going to take the last item and it's going to take that out, remove it. Okay. So pop usually goes to the last element, where remove, we can look for a specific value to remove. Notice that when you use delete, you use indices, and remove, you have to specify the value of that element. So if I want to remove P, I gotta say remove P. If I want to remove O, then I just have to say remove O. If I want to remove 20, then I just put remove 20. Okay. So that's the main difference between the delete and the remove, is that delete refers to location of the element, where remove refers to the value of the element.
Could you potentially use the remove function to get rid of things like punctuation from user input?
Yeah. And because the remove, we call it a pseudo method, is that in such case you would see that it seek first before it takes that out, right? So yes, you can definitely, you know, if you can clean up your data by using the remove before it goes into the database, right? You can look for certain typo or punctuation, things like that, and that way you can clean up the garbage before it's stored. So yes, that's a good idea, is to use remove for seeking and removing.
I have a question.
Yes.
For remove, we have to exact say what remove. Can we say like remove position 0?
No, because remove actually search for the value that it's taking out. So if, let's say that I have a word that has multiple O's, right? Remember how we were working on string with that? Or like my lists have the same number repeatedly, 100, 200, 100, 400, so forth. I can potentially remove all, the 100 from my list. Okay, so it's searching for the value versus, so if you want to actually go to a certain position, you have to use delete, DEL.
Okay.
And then lastly, you can pop. Okay. So I can pop from a certain position by specifying the index. Okay. If you don't put any index in there, if it's blank, then it's going to pop the last. Okay. Yeah, I know C++, Java has the same mechanism with pop or container. And, and insert is the same mechanism in C++ as well. If you're looking at, how you would use it with set, or you use it with a specific container. Next week, we're going to talk about sets. But this is what you would see, that you can pop from a certain location, or you can pop from the last if you leave it default, which is blank.
Pop.
Is it better to use go ahead.
Ask pop 1 not means delete or not means that, right?
No. Yeah. So what pop does is it just take out that value.
Okay.
that was either last added or it was added. Okay.
Okay.
The delete, when you delete it, it free up that space versus when you pop, that space still exists and it's capable of storing a different value into that element space.
I didn't see you run the program because I see the next step. You see the M and O disappeared.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I will run the
okay.
program for you.
Mm.
Let me use the other one to open. Otherwise, I have to search through it. And then you can also use clear. Andrea, did you have a question also?
That was a question I had. What was the difference
Okay.
between delete and pop?
Yeah. That was a pen. Okay. Remove, pop, and clear. Okay, so here it is, right? This is the example program. So we remove P, we pop the O, which is in that's the second element. We also pop the last one. When you leave it blank, it just goes to the last element, last in, first out. And then we can clear. Okay, so let's run. So when you clear, it doesn't completely remove that container. It just it becomes an empty container, meaning that it doesn't have assigned value. But when you delete, it takes that space and give it back to the system so that system can reutilize that space for other container. Okay. So there are specific functionality for this. So when you clear, that container is still there, as you see it print, right? It print an empty container with no assignment values.
Yeah, use clear means no, clear all
Yeah,
of the
clear all
integer.
the values, right?
Okay, but I see the from bottom the second one, your RBLE. I see the M gun and what the EL and O gun, but I didn't see you delete them.
Oh, so the M
not
gone
there.
is because I pop it. I pop, when you pop, it took out the last one,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, when you pop it, it took out the last one, and then you can pop the O because the O is in the second.
Okay.
So here is where you tell it where that is, the location where you want to pop.
Okay, you pop one, you just pick that out from list. What
Right.
left?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but the pop, what that does is the way pop method is designed is it free up that space for the stack as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's, and because the pop method is really allowing us to really make adjustment for stack. And in C++ and more of like Java, you would see that as essential because there's when you compile, it puts certain things onto the stack, and as the stack get full, you need to clear it up and get rid of it. So it's a way that we can clean up the stack by using, something like a pop method or the function pop.
But
So with the pop,
yes.
Okay, I'll go. So would pop be like you have an array with a declared size, and now you're just emptying the array, but the size stays the same? And delete is you're making the size smaller?
Yes. As you remove each one, it sizes it down.
Okay.
Yeah, but you can pop specific. If you don't pop the specific, it goes to the last one, so it does size it down. And then if you clear, it doesn't size it down. It still keeps it as its last state because it's stateful. It keeps the container based on what you previously left it as. So it's just ready for other values. Yeah.
If you put a Bob empty, that means give your last
Yes.
last one. Okay.
Last one, which is the M. Yeah. So if you default it, that's the default format is the empty. Then it just goes to the last one and take that one out.
Okay.
Or you can specify. Okay. So you ready to work on this one? Number 6. This is easy. So we're gonna take out 30 and then we're gonna take out 40 and 60. Okay. So I'll show you the one I have. And you don't have to use it that way. You know, the way I have it, but that's just something. So I chose to use delete because I want to free up the space for vowels. Okay. So that way it's more efficient with allocation of memory, but it also depends on the objective of your program. That's important, right? Sometimes you want to take out the value, but you still want to keep the size of the container the same. Then you want to use the other method. So this one I simply use delete. I have vowel assigned 20, 30, 40, 60, and 80. And then I chose to delete 30, which is one index. I print it. And then I chose, so now once that update, right, 40 and 60 moved over.
Okay.
Let me rerun this. So it's at the top. So I took out 30, so I left what I have left is 20, 40, 60, and 80, and 40 moves over to the second position now, right? Then I also delete 40 and 60, so I have to tell it that it's gonna go from the second to the third, which takes out the 40 and the 60. I'm left with 20 and 30 and 20 and 80.
Delete one. Delete. Oh yeah. Can you use remove?
Yeah. But yeah, so when you use remove, you gotta say remove 30, right?
Okay.
Yeah, remove 40, remove 60.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have to put the 30 and 40 and 60 in the remove parameter. But I choose to use delete because, you know, I just like freeing it up. And then showing you guys the adjustment in the index also help when it transition, it moves the 40 over to that location. Question? Okay, so this is number 6, super easy, maybe like 4 or 5 lines for the program. And you can choose any method that you deem that will be fitting. You have options with remove, pop, and delete. Okay. We only have 4 more to go, and I think we're gonna probably finish by 4. And I can come back to specific ones if you have questions. Okay, so this one definitely probably should use remove, right? It tells you for A, you have to use remove. So for 7, you're given letters A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and we want to remove the second letter, print the list, then remove the last 2 letters using pop, that's easy, print the list, and then remove all the letters from in the list right? But we still want to print the list, so you cannot do a delete with that. For C, you have to maybe clear, okay? So we want to first assign the list with the letters, and then we can go through the methods. So let me get to my program. So here's my program. I have letters A, B, C, D, E, F, G in my list. Those are assigned. Then I'm going to remove the second letter, which is B. So I tell it to remove B, print it. Then I'm going to pop the last two. Since I'm using pop with the empty parameter, it's just going to pop and then pop again. So I did a 2 pop there, and then print. And then lastly, I have it clear to clear all the letters inside that container. So here's my program. So I first have it, remove B. So you see that B is gone. So it has A, C, D, E, F, G. Then I went and I pop. And then I pop again. I took out the F for the next one. And then I have it clear. So it clear out A, C, D, E, and left the container empty. Okay. Any question? Now, if you use a pop, yes, you can point to the location for the pop, but since it's the last two, it's easy just to do a pop and a pop again, so you can see the difference in that.
You can't do a range with pop, can you?
No, because it's just go to that one location.
Okay.
Any question? So this is the one for the letters. And we're implementing pop, remove, and clear on this program. And you don't have to pop it this specific way. You can point to the value, but since pop defaults to the last, I chose to do that. Okay. So that was 7. Okay. Any question on delete, remove, pop, clear? Okay, so for 8, this gets into the multi-dimension. So you can find all of the methods that we talked about in the last exercises on page 4 and 5 of your notes. Okay. And I included, there are other methods that we didn't touch on. Possibly I will write that into the lab so that way we can apply more of like the real world practice with it. So we can do like count and sort and reverse and stuff like that for our lab. So you can have a better understanding of some of the other methods. So there are some additional methods and it tells you what it returns for each of the method. with the 2D list, when you're looking at a list, like I said, you can have a list within a list to give another dimension to that list. So the example that we see here is the 2D nums. We have 2 lists, okay, within, and so you would enclose it, 1 list, another list, and then you would enclose it with square brace around both of them. Okay, so when you print it, it would include both of the lists. Now we would use a for loop and the index, right, variable to be able to have it access each of the element. So the output of this is that you see that it would be 2 sublists inside the main list, and then when you send it through the for loop, it's going to access each of the elements. So the first for loop is going to access the first list, right? We're using range, and we're going to go up to the end of that first list. The second for loop, right? We would access the element inside the second list. So it's going to access each of the value for the second list. Then we would print it, and we want to print, right, both of them, of course. So we would bring down the variable that represents the index as it goes through the loop. So when you're looking at the dimension, if you're looking at the first list and the second list, right, you would refer to this as row and column, or X or Y, as what you would learn in two-dimensional array, possibly if you have taken a class like that before. So the number 2 here, the indices that we use is 0, 0, as it is the first list, the first element, right? Remember how at the beginning I mentioned that the index that we use, the first index represent the list number, and the second index represent the actual location of the element. So, and then the 4 is 0, 1, the 6 is 0, 2, 8 is 0, 3, and so forth. Because it's the first list, first element, second element, third element, and so forth. Then on the second list, we specify the second list by using the index 1 here, and then following that with the element location, 0, 1, 2, the element index. Okay, any question?
Okay, sorry, I got missed. I got lost. What's that example for the 2 dimension? You got 1, 0. First one is
The first one is represent the second list, list number 2, because the first list is list 0.
okay. So
Yeah.
the first is 1 is list. The
list,
second list.
yeah,
Position 1, position
yes,
0 is 3.
3.
Okay. So
Yeah, so
if one dimension you have like 0, 0.
yeah, with one dimension, you don't need the second. You just it knows that it's one list.
Okay.
So it just goes to the element position.
Okay. So
right? But when you have multi-dimension, you want to say list first and then element index.
Okay, for the one dimension, the second part, like 0, 0, second 0 doesn't work, right? Because we don't have.
Right. So it's just saying that this is the first list and the
Oh,
first element.
okay, okay, I understand.
First list, first element for this.
Okay, if you put 1, 0, what happened? The empty.
That will be 3. List 1,
No,
the second
the,
list 0.
if you have only one dimension and you
Oh
put
yeah.
0, 0.
Yeah, so 0. So if you have only one dimension, if you put only 1, 0, it will just say that that is 2, if that's the
Okay.
list. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Any question? Okay, so for 8, we are to create a list called students, and in students we have names and age, right? Numbers. So we need to use the nested for loops to display both, okay? And it's not going to be clean unless you specify the column value. I'm not going to make you do that, but I want you to use the nested for loop so you can see. Then we want to display the second name and age, which is Lisa, 27. So we want to display this, right? And then this. Okay? So simple. Sorry, I think I named it 2D. Oh, this is the example. I forgot. Oh, students. Sometime when I do this late, I forgot which name. Okay, so here we have students. We assign the 2 lists inside the student list. Then I would have, just follow the example, right? I would have the for I in range length students. So it's going to loop through all the way through. Okay. For the students. And then for this, what we're going to do is for the second for loop, we want to, as it loops through, we want to also print both from both lists. Okay. Now to print Lisa and 27, we would have I1 for I in students. Okay. So you issue the print method here, and then you would indicate that this is Lisa, which is index 1, and we use the membership operator in students. Okay. And then for just Lisa, you would do print students 0 and then 1. List 0, index 1. Print only 27, you would have print students list 1, index 1. Okay. So to solve the second area, we can have it, the print method with the for loop. We just say that I is in students, and we wanted to print I with index 1.
Why is it 0 so you want to put Lisa?
Because Lisa came from the first list, and that's list
Mhm.
0. And 27 came from the second list, which is list 1. So if you have a third list, that will be 2, right? And then the index number.
Mhm.
So
Okay. So did you just say if you thought about it, each list is a row?
yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Each list is a row, and then each of the index for the element is a column.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now you notice that when I did this, right, it gives me Lisa 27 as a sublist. It puts it in the square brace there, as we specify that we're accessing the index for each and then as a sublist. So you can do it that way to get the correlation between, you know, one list and another. Or if you access it individually. So there are a few ways to do this, but for Python, if you wanted to do it in one line, you can use the for inside the print method. Question? Okay, so we can see how that's done. And that was number 8. Okay, let's talk about tuples and dictionary real quick. Tuple is not hard because you can't really change much to it, but you would have some methods that work with tuples. So tuple, the elements inside tuple, you can have elements inside tuples, and you would use the parentheses instead of the square brace. That's tuple. So you still have to give it a name, and if you put it in the parentheses, it's gonna know that, the interpreter is gonna know that it is a tuple. You're not to, tuple is static, it's immutable, meaning that you can't really change it unless there is a sublist inside a tuple, then you can change part of that sublist. Okay, so we would have empty tuple, which is just an empty container. We would have tuple with integers. And keep in mind that once you assign the value, they stay the same. You cannot update the values inside that container. Okay, 1, 2, 3 will be part of my tuples. That's it. Okay.
Okay, so that means you can't use delete, like delete,
Right.
remove, you can't use that.
There's some, yeah, there's some, like we can count it, right? We can count how many. We can sort it, okay? Like, but it's still gonna be the same value. We can do some stuff to it, but yeah, you cannot insert, no insert.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So again, we can have a mixed type, but you know, it's completely, once you assign it, that's how it's gonna be. Okay. And then you can have it nested. Now, when you nest it like this, notice that you have a list, right, within a tuple. That means that I can change this part of the tuple. Okay. at that location, I can update some value because it's now a list inside a tuple. Okay, so once you see the square brace or the operator, you can modify some of that. But these guys right here, they stay static. They stay the same, not changeable. Okay? Only the ones in the square brace we can change. So the example of this is my tuple permit. And yes, you can print out using the index. I can print the P, I can print the T. Okay?
Okay.
And also because it's multi-dimension, because you have a sub-container inside another container, you can use indices to indicate rows and column, right? So if I wanted to print something from the first one, which is mouse, it's a string, and we can say, oh, I wanted to print the fourth
Okay.
element from that string. Okay, so mouse is the first, think of it like a first container, okay, and then the fourth element. Then we would go to the next one. We would print from the second list and the second element, which is 4. So 1 and 1. Very similar to lists, right? You can use the indices that way. You can also slice using index range, like what you have been doing with lists. That's fine. Okay. But when you're trying to change only the things in the square brace, if it contains a list, a tuple, if a tuple contains a list, you can change content of the list inside the tuple. Okay. So the data become mutable, right? Like in this case, 6 and 5 can be modified only. The other ones cannot. Okay. So I can change a 6 to a 9. I can change a 5 to another number, of course. Okay. And the way that you change it, just like before, is you would use the index and then the reassigned value. Okay, so I have my tuple and then point it to which list, which container inside that tuple, and then which element, and then equal to the updated value. Okay, so we simply do the reassignment. Now, in the case where you wanted to take out, update everything, you simply just reassign everything. All that does is it creates a container and then it has new value. That's it. Okay. So if you wanted to change everything in the tuple, you simply reassign everything in that tuple. But you cannot update individual element inside the tuple if it doesn't belong to a list container inside. Is that clear? Any question?
So which one's better for the real world?
List, and dictionary, actually, because once you get more than 2-dimension, list gets crazy. So you would use dictionary.
Okay.
But yeah. So in the case where if you have a lot of dimensions in the list, then consider using dictionary because that's what they design it for. Okay.
Yeah, I was
Make
doing
it more like a database kind of record.
I was doing number 10. It's very difficult.
Okay, I'll go over that. Okay, any question on tuples? So the methods that will work with tuples is the index. You can use it to search for, you know, the value at a specific index. Like if I pass like a 0, then it would say that, oh, this is the value at the first index. So you can use such method. You can use count return the number of times that a certain value occurs. So if we wanted to see how many times the O occurs in a string, right? Or the I occurs in a string for Missouri, you can count. So it will work that way too. Okay. So now what we would do is go to number 9 and then we'll hit 10 before we go. So declare a tuple and assign 5 values, 8, 11, 26. And notice that we have 32 and 46 inside the list. And then we want to replace 32 and 46 with 59 and 66. That's easy. So let's take a look at the program. And you can also delete. You can also use the delete to delete the entire tuple. Let's see here, tuples. Gotta find my program real quick, hold on. Change val tuples, that's it. Sorry. I started naming them all crazy, so. Okay, so here's my program. I just simply give it a name, val tupes. That's what I use is 8, 11, 26, and these goes into the square brace because they are a list inside a tuple. Then we're gonna change 32 to 59. So I would have my tuple name and then the indices. So I have 3 here. Why is it 3? Because it's 0, 1, 2, and 3, right? That container is the 4th thing in that tuple. So you would have a 3. And then I would have the first element of that 4th item in the tuple, and that's reassigned to 59. And then I update it again, right? 3, 1, and to 66, and then I print it. So here we go. Okay, so you can see the transition that we change 32 to 59 first, and then after that we change 46 to 66. Any question?
Do you have that function called replace?
For replace for tuple? No. Yeah, that's not, yeah. But in other form of container, you can use replace like string or list.
Oh,
Because tuple, you cannot rewrite to that location of the element. But in the list, yeah, so you have, so if you want to use replace, you have to identify that sublist, which we don't have. Okay, so if you assign it a name, then you can tie that to replace method. But yeah, I just simply wanted to make it a 1-line change for each one. So, but if you want to use replace, you have to identify that sublist identifier, give that sublist an identifier and then tie that to replace.
okay.
Okay. Any other questions? So the tricky part is to understand that, you know, what item it is in the tuple, which is the 3 here, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, because it's its own entity, right, inside that tuple. And then after that, this list as a fourth item, then you're going to access the element from that list. Okay, so if you get the multidimensional, that should be simple enough. But go back and review that if you're struggling with that. Okay, last one. Chris says it's hard. He's patient. It's not hard. Okay.
Oh, I figured it out. It just took me a long time.
It's easy. Once you see it, you're gonna be like, oh, so easy. Okay. So a dictionary part is near the end. Here's dictionary. It's a collection of unordered items, right? And it would use a key and a value pair. So the key goes before the colon and then the value goes after. So you can specify. So for example, I can have name as a key and then I would assign it a value. Casing Win, age as a key and then a value, an integer. Address, right, as a key. So the way that we can look at things is to rely on the key, and you can use the get method to be able to access the value that's assigned for that key. Like address is a key, 12345 Main Street. So you can use get to access 12345 Main Street from the address. Okay. So here it shows you how this is how you would specify it. So you would have a name for your dictionary, any identifier name, equal, and you would use the curly brace, right? And we can have string or integers or different type mix in this case, but you would have name is your key and we would assign it a value, Jack, right? You can have first name is a key and then Jack. Last name is a key and then you can say Johnson, right, as an assignment. Age is a key and then the value is 26. Height is a key and then the value is, you know, 64 inches, okay, etc. So in this case, we can print, right? We can print out the value from that key, which is name. We can do it this way. We can also use the get method, like this way. We can also, oh yeah, so we're trying to, if you access it out of the range, it's gonna throw an error. So just be careful with the dictionary. So we always want to use the key to pair it with the value. Now you would be able to use the pop method. You can also use, so you mainly use the pop method to remove. And then if you want a specific item to be removed at a certain location, you would use pop. If you wanted to remove the last item, the last pair, you would use a pop item. Okay. And then ultimately we can also use clear method to clear out that whole dictionary. And here are some of the examples. So I want to show you mine before we take off for the day. But you can pop, right? When you pop, you can say which key, right? And it's going to get rid of that. And then if you do a pop item, you leave it default empty. It's just going to go to the last item of the dictionary and get rid of it. And then we can also clear. So in the last exercise, it tells you to create a dictionary and you would have the key and the values. The name is John Doe, the ID is 99999, and then the course is CIS30A. We want to add a key, which is semester, and the value fall 2020. We want to change the value for course from CIS30A to Python. And then we want to remove the ID, get rid of this whole thing. And then we are going to pop item, remove the last, which is gonna be semester fall 2020, okay? So, and then we're gonna clear. Let's look at the program. Okay, so I have new dict as a my name for my dictionary, and in it I would go through and I would assign the value. Use the curly brace, name, colon, John Doe, comma. That's one item. Okay. Next item. Yes.
That's exactly how I did it. The only thing different is my comments.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's only so many ways to approach a dictionary based on the given case, of course, right? ID is 99999. Okay. Course is 30A. And think of the key and the value, they go together as a pair, and that would represent an item in the dictionary. Name, John Doe, ID, number, course, right, your course name. Then I print my dictionary. As I establish my dictionary, there I declare and assign the values and the keys. Then I would add the semester fall 2020. So I would bring down the dictionary name, and I would use the square brace, and I would say this is the new key, right? And the key is assigned fall 2020. And then I would update the course from CIS30A to Python. So again, dictionary name, and then put course in the square brace equal Python. Like that. Then we're gonna pop ID. So we simply go use the pop method here. So new dict.pop ID inside the parameter for pop method. Then print. Then we're gonna pop the last item, which is the last thing that we added, which is semester fall 2020. And then it's gonna print after it pops that item. Then we're gonna clear. So I have John Doe ID course, right? And then I added the semester. Let me close this real quick, and then maybe run it so I can move it over for you to see.
Where I was having problems was because there was not an example of how to add a new item. So that's why I was having problems, because there's not an example of it.
Right. And I want you to, well, if you understand all the container that we talked about so far, reassignment is the best way, right? Yeah. That's what we talked about last in Tuple. So, yeah, so I was trying to see if you guys can figure that out, but you figure it out. So, but at least I show you the example now. Okay, so when I add the new key and the parallel value for that key, that gets added here, semester fall 2020. Okay. So all you have to do is say the dictionary name and then whatever you're trying to add, put that there. Now, what it does is going to look through and it's going to say, oh, that doesn't have anything that I already have. I'm just going to add that on. Okay. But in the second case, when we updated the course, it found the course, and whatever the value that's assigned to course, it gets reassigned. And then when you pop it, you simply tell it what to seek as a key, because the key is, the main component. It's gonna seek ID and it's gonna get rid of that. It's gonna pop it. And then we would do a last pop item. So we got rid of semester here, where it leaves you with just name and course. And then we clear it where it becomes an empty dictionary. Okay. Any question? Hey, my timing is pretty good. I'm 2
Okay,
minutes under. Yes.
Okay, before you finish the class, I tell you, for this class, do you teach us a whole book or half book?
Oh, okay. So the book that you get from, if you buy it from Amazon or from Kindle, it's a set of 4.
Yes.
It's book 1.
Yeah.
Is the whole course. Is book 1.
So in this course, you will teach the whole book, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Book 1.
great.
Okay, and we're gonna go all the way to object. That's why I'm trying to do 2 chapters per, but the chapters are so short, and I supplemented a lot of the content for that book. That book is slightly lacking in such that, because it's very affordable in price, it's lacking a lot. So I'm supplementing a lot from internet and other books and stuff like that. Yeah, but we will go all the way to objects in class.
Okay, I want to know, for the winter semester, do you open next level? Python next level?
No, so for the next 2, we will likely opening it in spring. I have to add that. That reminds me, I gotta send the email to the CTE department that we will open CIS30B and C, B and C. Or actually we might go, either, because the networking and the security, they go together, but we have to think about if we wanted to do B and D, because all you have to do is fulfill 30A in order to take the other ones. So yeah, we will offer the next pair.
So next pair, B, C, so up to D, we will get the certificate?
E, there's 5.
Oh,
Yeah, so you're gonna do 2 more after this, and then 2 more after that one. So the D and the E is IoT.
Okay. D and E, you will use 1 semester.
Right.
B and C, you will use 1. So we total 3 semester.
Yes.
Okay.
Ideally, I want it to be finished within like a year and a semester, like 3 semesters, ideally.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really, you guys are the only ones that are going to transition to the next ones, because nobody else took CIS30A. It's a prerequisite for the other ones, and the E is the data structure for Python. So, technically you should have very good knowledge of Python going into the last class, which is advanced Python. But all of these now are articulated for UCR. So you can ask UCR. We just finished the articulation last month. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Okay, no, thank you.
You're welcome.
So are you going to use any part of the book for 30B and C?
I might use it for, I will use the later parts of this book for the E and some of D. But
what I did was I skated on half pipe.
I would suggest there is some packet T book that I want to use specifically for B and C because it has straight script to certain appliances. But I have to take a look at how the other books compare to our books. But the set that you get for however less than $20, less than $30, you get a whole set all the way to artificial intelligence. So data analysis. It's a good set. It doesn't have like a lot of like
feel like it anymore. And then
meaty content, but it gives you decent examples, so it's all right.
I played more basketball.
Okay. Any question?
Another sport where it's easy to twist your ankle.
Okay.
And that's when I really.
All right. So you guys have a good afternoon. I will see you on Wednesday for the lab. Let me see if there's any other question.
All right, see you in an hour.
All right. Yep. Yeah, I know. Bye.
And I guess it's like this really like very tough cartilage, and I ripped a piece of it about the size of my thumbnail. And I had to.
Yeah. So if you want to practice using the book,
as a
it's a
result,
good
now
source.
Pops every day. It hurts. So
I just had one quick question.
okay.
I
I
didn't want
can
to
still walk.
confuse
Sure.
anybody
I
with
can
it.
play basketball.
It was actually regarding the first one.
but I'm not-
I had
I'm not
done
what I
it a
was.
different way, and I was wondering if it still counts as correct.
As long as you achieve the objective of the program.
That's
I'm
the
fine
thing,
with
though.
it.
It did, but in a different way, because the way you worded it, it almost sounded to me like you wanted us to create a single printout or a single print that would contain the three, and it kind of did. Can I show you?
Yeah, hold on one second. Let me enable that for you.
Okay. It's like from your wording, I thought you wanted us to make it on one print line, all three of the things, the 1, 3, and 5.
Okay, let's see.
Okay. Where are you?
If you can do it all in one line, more power to you. And that's the whole point in the class is to.
Yeah, this one right here.
Oh, okay.
And then what it does is it pops out this.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
So
you're
I was
using-
wondering if it still counted. I just didn't want to
counts.
confuse them.
That's even better than I asked for, actually. Sure.
Okay.
Because yeah, ideally that's where we want to be, because we just went over loops and we went over control statements. So sure, that's great, actually. I'm fine with that.
Well, I was worried about that.
No, it's so like I mentioned many times before, there's so many ways that you can achieve the program objective, right? You don't have to program exactly like how I program, but the reason why I show you the programs is that because for if you're new to programming, that can be overwhelming, understanding all of these concepts and try to use them at the same time.
Definitely. Yeah, no, especially the syntax coming from C++ to this, I get mixed up so many times. It's ridiculous.
Well, but once, imagine like when I teach multiple programming classes in a day, I get confused.
Oh, I bet.
Sometimes like going
It's
from
like
JavaScript to C++.
different languages every hour.
but the programming concept is the same. Yeah, syntax sometimes a little different, but and then you catch yourself doing that. But I think a lot of it is habitual and practice too.
Yeah,
like if
definitely.
you get used to it. So good. I'm glad that you solved that in a different way. Okay.
Oh, thank you. Because I was a little confused by the wording. So it's like, wait, if she wants it on one line, I can't just call them up separately. I need to figure out a different way. And I couldn't do the skip method because that wouldn't work right doing, so I don't know. I just came up with that.
Okay.
All right.
That's
well,
great.
thank you for that.
I appreciate it. Yeah, no problem.
All right. See you later.
Goodbye. Other questions?
Oh, Professor, could you hear me?
Yes.
I just had a question. I was just using, I don't know if it was okay for me to use, can I show you the book that I'm using? It's been helping me understand it a lot better. If that's
sure. Okay. You can use any additional sources of your choice if that helps you understand and practice.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
All the work done too, and so far it's been good. So
Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with that too. I know a lot of the many students in this class, they're using online resources. I use online resources sometimes when I cannot get it from the textbook that's chosen or the textbook that's being used for the class, you know. So yeah, I'm totally fine with you using alternative sources to be able to get better or learn, you know, if that, because you know, it depends on how the information is displayed and come across, right? So I'm okay with that.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor. I'll see you Wednesday, right?
Okay, yes. Okay, see you then. Bye. Louis, you okay? Any question? Okay, I'm gonna sign off now, okay? Take care.